episode of Quarantined Coaches. Today we are with Coach Kenny at the University of Georgia. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So first thing I wanted to ask you was about Georgia. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like the state lottery thing, and kids who live in state go to school for free, something like that, and then it can make it really hard for out-of-state students to get admitted to a school in Georgia. Yes, no, kind of break that down for me.
Yeah, we've got two scholarships in state, which are great. The Hope Scholarship and then the Zell Miller Scholarship. And just like everything, it's GPA based, test score based, but 3.0 out of high school will get you. It comes out to about maybe 24% of tuition. It used to be back in the day, I think that the Hope covered full tuition, and I could have that off a little bit, but you're talking about 25% right off the top of your tuition, and then Zell Miller covers all of tuition. So that's a 3.727. So you're talking about your higher end students, but that's unbelievable if you think about it as a parent. Just 25% lopped right off the top. And then as far as the out of state. I actually don't know, but I think it's just like anything else. It's the price doubles out of state. So it's certainly a challenge for the out-of-staters.
For you guys, though, are you able to go and get out of state much, or is there not really much of a reason to, because you could maximize your budget maybe there in state?
Yeah, that's really it right there. I think we still recruit Florida and we've got a couple California kids and things like that. So I think we certainly could, but it's back to what you said. It's just, you're working against your own finances when you do that, because you're going to have to make it affordable for them. And I think the cost goes from maybe $24,000 to $48,000 or $46,000, whatever it is. And so, people want to go to Georgia, but I think the in-state talent is there. We really don't need to go out of state much.
Right. Okay, let's jump into baseball. I know you and I talking a little bit. There was some interest in what I was talking with Dave Thurno at Stetson about, which was the old school, new school wave. So are you more of an old school or a new school guy?
Yeah, I think if you made me pick, I would say old school, just because it's 24 years in, and but 3 years ago, and I thought about this question a lot because I didn't want to say, well, I'm kind of in the middle and just make it boring. But 3 years ago, I kind of went on a pilgrimage just so I didn't get left behind, and said, all right, I'm going to learn as much as I can and talk to as many people as I can about what people are considering new school. And so I'd like to think I've gravitated towards the middle a little bit now. Just because you have to, really, you just do. But at the end of the day, I think I'm still probably more of an old school guy. But at the same time, you better anymore now as a coach know what new school means and be able to apply it.
So do you agree with that statement, adapt or die? I hear that a lot these days.
I do. I really do, especially now. If I were just going to coach the way I coached 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't be coaching for very much longer. And I mean that. And I think, you have to be able to, you've got to be able to apply that new stuff, because you're going to have a kid that just needs it. That's how he learns. I had one of our best relievers call me last night. We sent out a video with all their analytics, and he wanted to know how come his vertical break is sometimes this and sometimes that. And if I didn't know what he was talking about, I could have a chance to lose him. It's just the way he chooses to learn. So yeah, I think anymore now, if you want to keep coaching at a high level, you better understand what's going on.
Give me an example of an old school technique that is dead or less important now.
Yeah, I think, I think it's on two fronts. It starts on the strength and conditioning, right? Lifting is bad. And I don't think anybody ever thought it was bad necessarily, but you can't get overly physical or it's going to affect your arm and things like that. Or the one I really thought about was kind of the capped long toss, the 120-foot. Hey, we can't throw any further than that. Just, those two things have they've evolved over time. And 20 years ago, I was the, hey, we're not going to throw the ball, with an up angle 120 feet. And then I met Alan Jaeger, and Alan's too nice to call you stupid, but he kind of talked me out of it. And then the other side of it, like I said, is the strength and conditioning. I think you have to be physical. You turn on the TV and you see these big leaguers, those guys aren't skinny. Those guys are jacked, and there's a reason. So I think those two stick out for me is just the capped throwing, the capped long toss, and the weight room as maybe something that could be a bad thing.
When you talk about lifting weights and the long toss stuff, so the stories are Bartolo Colon used to throw coconuts, right?
Yeah.
And Pedro soaked baseballs in water. Is that the same thing as weighted balls? Is that an old school method, or is that the new school method?
Yeah, I think it's certainly both. I think that stuff's been going on a long time. Mike Marshall was but he thought he was crazy 20 years ago talking about weighted ball stuff and the overload and the underload. And I think now it just went from guys in their backyard throwing wet baseballs, which I think we all used to do. We didn't know, but we did. And Cologne throwing coconuts and all that stuff. Now, rather than it just being a guess, it's a science. It's studied. So you know how to apply it. And I was like everybody else. Weighted balls made me nervous. I was anti. So it's like, we're not doing it. And then I thought about it, talked to some people, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, listen, this isn't exactly what everybody says it is. It's studied, it's researched. You can use it how you want to use it. So yeah, that's one of them too. Weighted balls kind of as a taboo, is kind of that old school, don't do it. And
yeah,
we're not doing it now.
Let's stick there for a minute on the weighted balls, because that is such a huge deal today, across all levels really, but especially at the high school travel transition into college level. So good idea, bad idea. When is it a good idea? When is it a bad idea?
Yeah, and that's, I'm gonna give you the cop-out answer. I think it applies, or really just it's what everybody wants it to be. And I think just like I said, I thought weighted balls, hey, if you do this, you're not going to have time to do all the other stuff. You're not going to have time to actually learn how to be a pitcher and all that stuff. It's just not true. It just comes down to how do you want to use it, and trying to manage volume. We talk about that all the time. Is everything is volume. Bands are volume, weights are volume, arm exercises are volume, weighted balls are volume. It all comes down to how you balance it and how you think it's going to help your player. And it's not a one size fits all model. That's the big thing, is some guys' bodies aren't just ready for it. And there's so many advanced tests now where you can learn who that is. You can apply it how you need to apply it. But man, I think if you want to coach high-level players and make these high-level players better, you better have some form of weighted ball routine in your program.
And the weighted ball routine, essentially, that is to increase velocity. Where else, do you find the benefits? I mean, I know at the high school level, when you think of a weighted ball program, kids are thinking, well, that's going to get my velocity up. Are there more uses to it than just that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sell, sure, and I think it's certainly possible. Weighted balls in an academy setting and a weighted ball program in a team setting are two different things. I mean, and I guess you can also term that as in-season, off-season, really. Off-season weighted ball programs, sure, I think they're designed around velocity increases. And then in-season weighted ball programs are more about just warm-up, health. And then the thing that I've seen that I really like about it, and it kind of sold me, was the movement pattern stuff, how the arm works, corrective moves, and a heavier ball helps these guys feel how their arms are moving, either right or wrong. And that's a challenge, and it takes a while, which is why, our freshmen go 3 weeks and just work on the movement of throwing the weighted balls. They don't even get to throw it. So Yeah, there's velocity gains for sure. But what I really like about it is just the corrective movements and just the warm-up stuff, just how it makes each player's arm feel.
Should a 12-year-old have any reason ever to pick up a weighted ball?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, I think. I probably wouldn't do it. Would I teach them the drills that go along with the weighted ball stuff? Yeah, I probably would. Could they throw a 6-ounce or a 7-ounce ball? Yeah, maybe. Do you want to keep them away from 2 and 4 pound balls? I think probably so. But I do think there's some really good corrective drills that go along with the actual weighted ball programs that are great for everybody.
What is the big misconception about weighted balls, though? Like, what is it that you had to get over? Thinking like, oh, the old school mentality of, oh, no, was it injuries? What was
Yeah. It's simply put for me, yeah. Just I guess it was two things. How am I going to put it in? How are we still going to practice baseball and make these guys good pitchers and still do this stuff? Because I had it in my head that this is an hour-long program and the head coach is going to get mad at me because we can't field a bunt or hold a runner because all we're doing is throwing weighted balls. And that's just wasn't it, obviously. You can use it how you want to use it. But yeah, I think simply put, the injury piece made me nervous. And it's just like anything else. It's just like the weight room. You work your weighted ball program around how each guy feels and how each guy's week sets up. And then you just ask them how they're doing and how they like it and then use it accordingly.
So I'm not going to let you off the hook here, okay? Because a lot of families are watching this for information and for guidance. So there's a dad or a kid or a mom or a coach sitting out there right now saying, okay, I hear all of this, but how do I know if I should use weighted balls or not?
Yeah.
Or how can I figure that out? Because obviously you can't tell us, oh, you should or you shouldn't. But what should these families be looking at to help guide them? Oh, yes, this is something for my kid or not for my kid. Like, how do you figure that out?
I think without having a biomechanical degree, which most of us don't, I think simply put, strength. I think you need to be smart enough to look at your kid and say, okay, he's just not very strong. And I need to figure out when he gets stronger, you just put a little bit more in each year or each 6 months or each, whatever segment you think is the right time. And I think the same thing throwing off the mound. I think if he's not very strong, you want to be careful he doesn't throw too much. If he's not very strong, you want to be careful that he's not throwing too often or more often, depending on what his arm or how his arm reacts. So I think without having access to all the tests that we have access to now, the movement screening and all that stuff, I think you just have to look at how strong they are, how their body moves, what their body can handle. And then when you feel confident enough, and parents know that better than anybody about how their kids react, then you start sprinkling it in.
I heard a lot of coaches talk about we're not doing anything new. We're just using new vocabulary, right? Or we have, now we have hard numbers to put next to something that we've always seen with our own eyes, right? So that these new school metrics, it's the same as what you've been doing the whole time. Now it's just putting a number next to it. Fair to say, or no? Are you learning way more than before?
I think it's fair to say, but I also think there's a limit. And trust me, I thought that too, by the way. And there's times where I still think that, where it's like, I didn't need a number to know that guy's good. That guy's good. He makes people swing and miss. Like, there's something to his fastball. That's what we used to call it, right? We used to call it the magic fastball. The 88-mile-an-hour fastball that everybody thinks they should rip, and nobody hits it, especially when he's throwing it at the belt. And obviously, that now means he has a high spin rate, or he has vertical break, or he has extension, or he has a vertical approach angle. There's so many metrics now that can create swing and miss. where before it was like, man, that guy's just got an invisible fastball. And so I do think we all know as baseball people that there's something going on there. Now you can put a number to it. And now you can say, all right, let's use this. Let's exploit this. And I was a culprit just like anybody else where, you know, I've got guys who are getting people to swing and miss up in the zone 5 years ago, and I'm hammering away at them to throw down in the zone, you know, just because that's what we always did. And now, you know, I could look at the number and go, oh, no, we're staying away from down in the zone. We got to go up. And so I do think baseball is cyclical. It all kind of comes back around. But I do think there's a limit now to what your eyes can tell you, and you need the numbers.
What old school coaching technique or vocabulary do you still lean on at Georgia?
Yeah, I think, you know, the mental game is still really, really important, especially in the SEC when you're playing in front of 8,000 to 10,000 fans who really don't like you, and you better figure out how to handle it. And there's no way to practice that. Like I tell our guys all the time, I don't even like making mound visits in front of all those people, because if you trip, they're going to wear you out, you know? And so I don't make mound visits in front of big crowds. And you know, and that's,
what happens if somebody's in trouble?
Yeah, we'll just take them out or let them ride. You know, and so you got to be able to handle that. And so I think being able to understand what the mental game is and apply it. And then I think, the other one that we all do is you better learn or know how to teach toughness or competitiveness and how to handle the big moment and all those things. And there's no metric for that one. And I don't really have the answer to it. Some of it's recruiting, but you know, you better have a foundation of competitiveness and toughness or it's going to be a struggle.
Are there any technologies that can help players with the mental side of the game?
You know what? I think it's success. I think they have to have confidence and they have to have success. And sometimes having success is understanding the technology and the numbers. Maybe that gives them a little more confidence. Say, hey man, look, yes, it might be 88, and yes, you may not like your breaking ball, but look at this metric here. That means swing and miss. That's an outlying metric, and then that becomes confidence, and then that becomes success. And so just getting them to understand who they are, which I think is, first of all, enormous, because once you get comfortable with who you are, you're going to have confidence and success, and then now you're going to be more competitive.
So what was the learning curve like for you when all this technology was coming out, especially since, you know, you're a pitching guy? What was going through your head at the time? Were you worried like, man, I'm gonna be out of a job in 3 years? You know, what did you have to do to stay up with everything that was happening?
Yeah, it's a good question, because like I said, it's pretty new for me. It's 3 years ago really that it, you know, I had a choice to make. And it's overwhelming. It felt like I was going back to college. Still does. And now I'm searching for it. I like it. I enjoy it, where before it was terrifying, because it's just so different than anything we've ever had. And you know, the good thing is these players are so much smarter now, man. They're so worldly because of all the information they have access to. And the other side of it is we're lucky to coach at universities where there's a bunch of smart people. So you just hire the smart people. And you just say, okay, this is what I want. And this is kind of what we did is, okay, here's what I'd like it to look like. I don't have any idea how to get there. You guys do it. And then, you know how kids are now. They're like, they dive into it and they have access to everything, like I said. So you just surround yourself with smart people, and then they can kind of dumb it down. And then the hard part for me was, how do you implement it? It was like weighted balls a little bit, because some guys don't care. You know, a couple of our top guys couldn't care less, but then a couple of our top guys, they're really interested in it. So it just, I guess just like anything else, you get over the fear of what you think it is, and then just figure out what it actually is, and then get after it.
What is something that you have always believed about technology that still holds true? Something that you're like, it's going to ruin the game in this way, or it's going to slow down the game in this way, or it's going to hurt players in this way. Is there something that even watching the evolution of technology, you're just like, yeah, see, I told you that was going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know if I could say that I could call anything out, but I do think that, everybody thought it was spin rate and launch angle there for a while, right? It's like those are the two things you have to have, and those things are so important. And so really we just looked at the spin rate on the pitching side and said, all right, he's either a high spin or a low spin, and that determined everything. Well, in the last couple of years, that's not the case. You can have a low spin fastball and still pitch up in the zone if your vertical break is a certain number, right? And that's something that I couldn't have had this conversation 2 years ago. I would have just turned the computer off on you and gone about my day. And now, it's like it just isn't one thing, I guess, is the best way to say it. It isn't if this, then that. And,
Right.
and that's where, and I mean it, you have to have smart people around you, because they've got to be able to determine what that is so I can coach it.
Right.
And I still have a limit to what I know and what I can use, but it's less than it was. So I just think it's evolved just like everything else. And I do think it's back to what you said earlier, though, is we're still teaching the same things with the same guys. We just show them different ways.
What is a pitcher, an MLB guy, that kind of epitomizes the new school version of a pitcher and the old school version of a pitcher?
Yeah, I thought about this one for a little while, and I think, I grew up in Michigan, so I'm a Detroit sports fan, which can be torturous, but I'm a Tigers guy, always have been. And
There was a couple years with the Pistons that was okay, like the early 2000s.
well, we had a really nice run, not to sidetrack this deal, but, with the exception of the Lions, who are just generationally awful, everybody else has been pretty good. So we're in a little bit of an
That's
edge.
true. Now that I think about it, the Red Wings, the Tigers, yeah, it's actually a good sports town.
The Sundays in the state of Michigan are not very important to us, because it's just, we're going to lose. But
Sorry, my ADHD and yours, it seems like you might have it too. We got
no question.
Let's go back now. Okay, so you grew up in Michigan.
Verlander was the guy I thought about a little bit, because he kind of reinvented himself, and he said he was going to reinvent himself, and then he did, and then Detroit traded him, of course, which is kind of our deal. But he kind of was just beat people on talent and stuff there for a while, and now he understands who he is. He adds a different pitch. He understands what up in the zone in the breaking ball, off of the up in the zone fastball, and then he's going to cut it. Now he's going to sink it. So everything's matched up. And I think if you would have asked him 5 years ago what all that meant, he'd probably give you a different answer. I mean, I don't know, maybe he did, but I think he's reinvented himself through the knowledge of analytics. And I thought that was pretty cool, because he said he was going to do it, and then he ended up doing it.
So you're going to go with him for both sides of the answer, because you could see him as the old school and the new school guy.
Yeah, I think he's the bridge. I really do, because he's the guy that was just awesome. His stuff was awesome. And then it got I don't want to say average, because it's never been average with him, but he learned how to become above average again with a better understanding of who he needed to be.
So who do you like better, the old Verlander, the new Verlander? Or the question, and this question comes from Rob Friedman, the pitching ninja, but he wanted me to ask you, if it were up to you, do you want that old school mentality, that just over the top competitor like a Max Scherzer, or I think he put it as a silent assassin in Jacob deGrom?
Yeah, I gravitate personally towards the silent assassin guy. It's just I was silent, probably certainly not an assassin with stuff wise, but those are the guys that I personally gravitate towards. But I've gotten better with the over-the-top competitor and the guys that show a bunch of emotion, because I think you kind of have to. I think it's so hard now to get people out and so hard to compete at a high level that it's okay to show some emotion. And so I think if you made me pick, I'm more of a silent assassin, go about your business, try to stay under the radar type of guy. But you know, I've gotten away from trying to squash the crazy competitors. I've kind of learned how to let them go a little bit and show some emotion.
Yeah, and kind of expand on that for me in the sense of you're on the recruiting trail, right? Because kids are told so much, you know, they're told how they're supposed to handle their emotions, right?
Yeah.
They're told they need to act a certain way. And then at one point, okay, well, that kid's crazy, he's over the top. And then at another point, it looks like he doesn't care, right? So, like, what's the right way to go about handling your emotions? What is too much? What is too little? Or maybe it's easier for me to ask you, what are you looking for in a player, you know, with how they handle their emotions out there?
Yeah, I think it's on the recruiting side. It's the same thing. I think as long as you're consistent, if you're the guy that's not going to say much, you just go about your business, but you're going about it the right way and you're doing it consistently, and it's not a roller coaster, then that's fine. It's the same way with being crazy. Is just be crazy all the time, and we see that.
Right.
We always see it, right? In summer league games, guys are screaming and yelling in the first inning, and then they get down 3-0, and nobody's saying anything. And so if you're going to be one way or the other, just be that way all the time. And we learned that lesson the hard way, and I'll never forget this ever. Last year against Florida State, who came in and absolutely ruined our regional, and outplayed everybody. And our guys tried to do more than what they were, and our pitchers tried to be a little more, show more emotion than they normally do, and that's a red flag right there. And so we knew we were in trouble when we noticed that. And we looked over in their dugout, and they were the same all the way through the game, and that's when you know you're going to get beat. And so I think consistency is something that we look for.
Are you able to teach consistency of, you know, emotional approach?
Well, I think you have to do it through routine. I think what you do is you backtrack, you work backwards, and you talk to them about daily routine, weekly routine. Plan your day out, plan your week out, and that's a large part of my job. But stick to it. Find one that works for you, and it's probably 3 different pieces, as you know. It's day, week, game. What are you gonna do on a game day? If you're a reliever, you're a starter, stick to it. Same thing. What are you doing on Monday on your off day? You know, it's, as we know, there's no off days. So they're probably in the weight room. They're probably in study hall, whatever it is. Teach emotion or controlling your emotions by your preparation and your routine. And I think that will build the consistency that we talk about, which is end confidence and all that stuff. And then it's easier for them and they feel comfortable being consistent.
When I think about the travel circuit, the high school circuit, I think about that assistant coach, and you can catch it multiple times every single game where they're sitting on the bench with the player trying to lift their spirits, right? Or the kid comes in from the outfield and they're pushing their chin back up, you know, being that emotional support guy. And then I think just perception wise, we think, oh, Georgia, SEC, it's all business. It's all everybody's, you know, hard and able to get out there, and you have to be able to do that at the college level. But these are kids, right? Like, how much time are you spending each game, like you're on a little league field, building these kids back up after something happens out there?
Every game, all the time. That doesn't change. It never changes. Our 2 best players are pleasers, and that's a good thing. They want to please their teammates. They want to please their coaches. So they don't want to let anybody down. And that doesn't mean they're soft. It's the opposite. It just means they care. So you have to manage emotions and their expectations for themselves because they care so much. And there's some other guys that know exactly what I'm going to say before I get to them. And those are the dudes you can have some conversations that are a little easier. So yeah, it's funny what baseball does to you. It doesn't matter the level. You're still going to have to pump some guys up and And I do think that's helped me over the course of 24 years, where before I get a little chippy in the dugout and can be negative, and that doesn't help. You know, just because I'm mad doesn't mean I need to tell them I'm mad, because I want to win and they want to win. It's all, we're all working towards the same thing. So our job as coaches is to help them put themselves in a position where they're going to succeed and help us win. And it's just like the Little League dugout or the Summer League dugout. You're going to have to pump some guys up, and that's fine.
Well, so we could stick here now and talk about old school versus new school as well, right? Because I think everything when we're talking old school, new school is about the technology and about the improving of the players. But what about the just personalities of kids 15 years ago, 20 years ago versus today, right? We hear all the time, oh, kids nowadays are soft, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are the big personality differences that you've had to adjust to?
Yeah, and I thought that too, and I still think that at times, even though I know that's probably not true.
Wait, think that kids are soft these days?
Yeah, tough
We
guys.
all do. I don't care what anybody says. We all do.
Tough guys 15 years ago, soft guys now, and then.
Well,
then
by the way, our parents thought the same way of us, right? And their parents,
right.
like every generation's always going to think like, oh, these kids are soft. Like when I grew up, blah blah blah. So
yeah.
But again, there's my ADHD. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and I think the issue now is these guys are way smarter than I was and that we were. It's not even close. It's not even close. And so I thought that, and I really thought that 20 years ago they were tougher. And I don't know if that's true or not. You know, I heard Andy McKay talk. Andy's in charge of the Mariners minor league stuff now, and he's been a coach forever. And now he's kind of a mental game guru, and he's really good at it. And I heard him say, everybody's tough and everybody's soft. And he's right. I mean, it's really that simple. We're all tough and we're all soft. And you catch me on the wrong day, and my wife will call me soft. You know, so it's just, that's how it is. And so you just have to adapt to who you're coaching. And because they're going to be tough on some days and they're going to be soft on others. And I don't know if that's an indictment necessarily. And because these kids also show way more emotion now than they used to. Like, we're in the age of the bro hug, right? Everybody wants to hug everybody. And I'm not a hugger. It's not my deal. But, you know, I got to let it happen, because that's how they respond now. And that doesn't mean they're soft. It just means they're a little more aware of everything. And it's back to what you asked earlier about emotion. It's like, if I try to squash that and have a no bro hugging rule, then you're going to lose your team. But I will say this, that I do think these kids handle the spotlight better now. I really do, because the spotlight's always on them.
Right. I think that you see a lot of that because of how early they feel like the spotlight's on them, right? Like, I mean, just for them, the Little League World Series or the district championship, you know, and going to a tournament in Fort Myers, like, that's pressure that didn't, I guess, exist for previous generations. The bro hug, I like it. Oh, I bet you're going to be extremely excited to hug everybody though when you're out on a baseball field again. So yeah,
I don't do it. I don't do it. I'll stiff arm them, but I'll let them bro hug some other people.
What are some things that maybe we've lost touch with about the old school part of the game or of coaching that you feel like we should not have lost that part, you know, kind of got pulled away from us?
Yeah, I think teaching competitiveness, teaching toughness. You know, I don't know if you can teach those the right way all the time, but, you know, I think, and I get sucked into this now too, where we spend a lot of our time, whether it be on mechanics or understanding, you know, what this pitch is doing from the analytics side. And then you walk away from practice and go, man, you know, we just got to do a better job competing in our bullpens, you know, or competing on the mound or whatever it is. And I think the only way you can do that is just by holding them accountable to every single detail. You know, I think I thought about that a lot was, okay, how do you teach it? How do we teach it? And I think in large part, the way we teach it is through holding them accountable to every detail. That doesn't mean yell and scream. It just means, do it again. That's not how we're going to do it. This is how, back to setting up a weekly routine. This is how you're going to go about your week. And if you don't, then we're going to press rewind and try it again. So I think trying to figure out how to maximize your practice time and make sure you don't spend all of it on pitch design, and make sure that you can blend pitch design with competing and understanding what that is, handling the count, whatever it is. So that's something that we have to catch ourselves every once in a while, is make sure we're holding them accountable about every detail.
So then what I would say is, what I'm hearing is you want to scream profanities at these kids, and you want to push them around like we used to, right?
Yeah, there's plenty of profanity now.
We haven't lost that yet.
No, that's just part of how I talk, unfortunately. But it's really hard not to use it as we're talking. But, I think.
I'm saying that's like when people say, oh, the old school way is just yell a bunch of cuss words and tell a kid to get the F out of here, drink out of the water hose, push them around a little bit, right? Like that's teaching them how to be tough.
Yeah. And I think where that's changed is now you're going to teach them how to be tough by holding them to a schedule, holding them to details. And the new school kid is, they're going to ask you why. And you better tell them, you better know the answer to that, not just because I said so, which I want to say all the time. And I do every once in a while, by the way, because I said so, dude. That's why. And you can't bust that out every once in a while or all the time. But the new school pushing around and screaming at them is holding them to an everyday routine, an all the time routine, an every minute of your day routine. And then talking to them about why that's important and how that equates to playing time, and then playing in a big game versus a 10-0 game.
Interesting. Coach Kenny, I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and keep college baseball alive this spring.
Appreciate it, man. It was fun.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. You guys stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you this summer.
Okay, you too. Thanks.